Hello friends, welcome to Finished Work Eschatology vlog number 29, subtitled The Sign of the Son of Man in Heaven. You might be asking, have we heard this before? Vlog 27 was called Signs in the Heavens, and that title was taken from Peter's sermon in Acts 2, in which he talked about the signs that would appear in the heavens according to the prophet Joel. They are two different things. There were the signs in the heavens, and there is the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Notice signs in the literal heavens and the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, not heavens. I'm taking this from Matthew chapter 24, verse 30. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. I'm going to go ahead and read 31 because we're going to try to cover some of it today. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the earth to the other. We'll finish that part next week and then move into the parable of the fig tree as we proceed into Matthew chapter 24. This is a proof text that Jesus is the Son of Man in heaven. And it's proof of the Daniel 7 prophecy, which we have read before and we will read again. Let's read Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion, and glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom, the one which shall not be destroyed. So when Christ appears in verse 30 of Matthew 24, the sign of the Son of Man appearing in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth mourn. We'll deal with all the tribes of the earth mourn in a moment. Christ's appearing in judgment on the day of vengeance on Jerusalem was proof that he was indeed receiving the kingdom that will never end. Remember, Daniel told us that the Son of Man came on the clouds in front of the Ancient of Days. The Ancient of Days handed the Son of Man a kingdom which shall not end. And the sign of the Son of Man appearing in heaven is the judgment that falls on Jerusalem. Verse 30 of Matthew 24 is not the sign of something happening in the heavens that the Son of Man is in heaven. That is adding things to the verbiage that are not there. I want to read to you from a couple of outside sources. We'll deal with some Old Testament scripture in a moment as well. I want to read to you from one I don't guess that I have read from over this vlog series, a book called An Eschatology of Victory. This was originally published in 1971. The author's name is J. Marcellus Kick. And he says this in regards to the parousia, in regards to the coming and the revelation of power and glory in Matthew 24, verse 30. The judgment, by the way, this is page 137 of An Eschatology of Victory. The judgment upon Jerusalem was the sign of the fact that the Son of Man was reigning in heaven. There has been misunderstanding due to the reading of this verse, as some have thought it to be a sign in heaven. But this is not what the verse says. It says the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. The phrase in heaven defines the locality of the Son of Man and not of the sign. A sign was not to appear in the heavens, but the destruction of Jerusalem was to indicate the rule of the Son of Man in heaven. I've even heard some dispensationalists, whom I consider fiction writers, even though they are supposedly writing non-fiction eschatology, make the statement that in some future generation after the tribulation of 7 years, there's going to be a visible sign in the heavens like Jesus on the cross or something physical that the world would see, but based upon the reading or the literature in the Greek, it doesn't appear to be the case based upon this verse. I also want to read from another one that I don't think we've read from in this study, and it's one that wrote some of the latter 20th century's most important writings on eschatology. If you have read nothing by David Chilton, I would highly recommend you do so. He wrote 3 that are widely renowned as some of the better writings: The Great Tribulation. He wrote Paradise Restored. We're going to quote from both of those today. He also wrote The Days of Vengeance, and which was pretty much an expose of the book of Revelation. So if you're interested, and we have had a lot of people in this study want some of those resources. If you're interested in a look at the book of Revelation, The Days of Vengeance by David Chilton might help you. I want to read from his book, The Great Tribulation, published in 1987. Here's from page 25. This is in regards to Matthew 24:30. The destruction of Jerusalem was the sign that the Son of Man, the second Adam, was in heaven, ruling over the world and disposing it for his own purposes. At his ascension, he had come on the cloud of heaven to receive the kingdom from his Father. The destruction of Jerusalem was the revelation of this fact. I love that phrase. Let me say it in my language, my way. That Jesus ascended on a cloud. There's Jesus coming in the clouds before the Ancient of Days. And the Ancient of Days handed to him a kingdom which shall not end. That's from Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. The revelation or manifestation of that would be the destruction of Jerusalem, is the revelation of the fact that Jesus has been given a kingdom. So he had to remove the kingdom of the Mosaic economy in order to set up the kingdom that would not end. I'm back to the quote from David Chilton's Great Tribulation, page 25. In Matthew 24, therefore, Jesus was not prophesying that he would literally come on the clouds in AD 70, although it was figuratively true. His literal coming on the clouds, in fulfillment of Daniel 7, took place in AD 30 at the beginning of the terminal generation. I always thought terminal generation was quite a term. But in AD 70, the tribes of Israel would see the destruction of the nation as the result of his having ascended to the throne of heaven to receive his kingdom. In another passage from Paradise Restored, a book Chilton also published, and I believe Paradise Restored was published in 1987. Let me look at the date. I like to do this so that it's easy for you to find. No, Paradise Restored was 1985. And this is from page 100 of the 85 publication. The location spoken of is heaven, not just the sky. Second, it is not the sign which is in heaven, but the Son of Man who is in heaven. The point is simply that this great judgment upon Israel, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, will be the sign that Jesus Christ is enthroned in heaven at the Father's right hand, ruling over the nations and bringing vengeance upon his enemies. The divinely ordained cataclysm of AD 70 revealed that Christ had taken the kingdom from Israel and given it to the church. The desolation of the old temple was the final sign that God had deserted it and was now dwelling in a new temple, the church. And I also like that phrase that Christ took the kingdom from Israel and gave it to the church. If you'll recall, we read to you from Jesus' prophecy to the Pharisees that, and I'm going to go back and read it from Matthew 21:43. Therefore I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken from you and given to a nation bearing the fruits of it. And this is following the parable of the wicked vine dressers or the wicked tenants. And we dealt with that way back, I think, in vlog number 2. So this is a fulfillment of that. This is that sign of the heaven that this is what has happened and this is what will happen. Now, I don't know that we'll go a full 20 minutes today because I only want to cover so much in one day and I don't want to cut myself off too terribly much. So I want to move on to Matthew chapter 24, verse 30, the middle of the verse, and then maybe get into 31. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. Some have taken this of evidence that this is at some return of Jesus at the end of a tribulation period in which everybody cries upon seeing Jesus. But the phrase tribes of the earth ought to tell you that this has to do with Israel. And the reason we say this is because never in the Bible are Gentiles referred to by the term tribes. Tribes is a term reserved for the segregations of the children of Israel. So it's the tribes of Israel that mourn, not the Gentiles. And this is also the fulfillment of an Old Testament phrase. Let's go to Zechariah chapter 12. If you have never really studied Zechariah, I want to tell you, there's probably no more unheralded but necessary book in the Old Testament than the book of Zechariah. Did you know, I wrote about this in my book Between the Pieces, published in 2013, did you know that the book of Zechariah, chapter 11 specifically, is the chapter that tells us that God broke his covenant with Israel if they would buy him out of that covenant, and they did buy him out, and they set the price, and they set the price at 30 pieces of silver. And in Matthew 26, which is a couple of chapters past where we're studying, Judas would be offered 30 pieces of silver for Jesus, which according to Exodus 21 was the price of a wounded slave. So Israel would literally buy God out of the old covenant by paying him what they thought of him. That's incredible to me. So if you haven't studied Zechariah, it is certainly worth the study. Zechariah chapter 12, listen to verses 11 and 12. In that day there shall be a great mourning in Jerusalem, like the mourning at Hadad-Rimmon in the plain of Megiddo. And the land shall mourn, every family by itself. The family of the house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves. The family of the house of Nathan by itself, and their wives by themselves. And we have etc., etc., on through the end of verse 14. But did you notice that the confinement of tears over the destruction of Jerusalem is to the families of the house of David? It is to the families of Israel, to the tribes of Israel. Now, taking that thought back to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 30, let's deal with this phrase, all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. Will help confine it down a little bit more. If tribe speaks of Israel, earth does not speak of North America, South America, Australia. He does not use the word cosmos. There are three words primarily that get translated as the English word world or earth. One we've dealt with extensively, and that's eon. And the eon is an age. He hath appeared at the end of the world to put away sin in himself. The Greek is he hath appeared once at the end of the age to put away sin in himself. Go ye into all the world. Go ye into all the cosmos is the word. It's the whole planet. Go all over the place and preach the gospel. And then there's the word gay. It's the transliterated G-E, but it's pronounced gay in the Greek. And that word is translated earth, but would be better translated, and is most of the time in the New Testament, better translated as land or a spot. Such as the decree goes forth throughout all the land. It didn't go forth throughout all the world, the cosmos, but it went forth throughout all the land. Whenever Jesus says the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven and the tribes of the earth will mourn, he uses the Greek word gay. He says, all of the tribes of the land shall mourn. So he's confining the mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, mourning, to the Jews that are in the land. This makes sense, again, because earlier in the chapter, Jesus told those Christians to flee into the mountains of Judea. They will do so at the destruction of Jerusalem. And then there will be the mourning of those who did not flee, and they will be in the land. Matthew chapter 24. Let's finish the verse. They will see the sign of the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Over the last few weeks, we've did the sign. We've did the coming on the clouds. We've done his arrival, both in the Old Testament and the New. So I want to move on to 31, although I will not exhaust the verse today. We're going to stop a little bit short today because it needs a lot more time. He will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. They will gather together his elect from the four winds. The word elect here is chosen ones. They will gather his chosen ones from the four winds from one end of the earth to the other. This verse has been used to try and prove a post-tribulation rapture by some who would put a return of Christ at the end of the 7-year tribulation, and they use Matthew 24, verse 31, as the angels coming to gather them up. I want to show you Matthew chapter 23 and verse 37, and I'm going to close this week with this thought, and then we'll set you up for next week. Matthew 24:37. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, verse 38 now, see, your house is left to you desolate. Jesus speaks of wanting to gather together the children of Israel in Jerusalem, and begs them to let him do this prior to his death. He's not talking, I'm doing this to set us up for understanding this next verse. He's not talking about physical gathering. He never wants to gather all of Israel underneath his arms the way a hen gathers chicks under her wings. It's metaphorical. He's talking about a spiritual gathering. He laments, mourns, cries that the people of Jerusalem will not allow him to bring them together. And so he talks about desolation on the other side of that. Behold, he says, see, your house, or behold, your house is left unto you desolate. And this is what he says in verse 39. For I say to you, you shall not see me from here on till you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Now, next week we're going to talk about when that would happen, and we're going to talk about how that would happen. And as you can see by looking at the clock, those are two things we can't do in 3 minutes. So I want to do those next week. So the review is the sign of the Son of Man in heaven is proof that the Son of Man has come in judgment, and that he is in heaven receiving a kingdom which shall last forever. We studied the phrase earth. We studied the tribes of the earth. We are rapidly heading towards moving away from this segment, but we'll finish it up next week. I hope you have a great one. God bless you.